what is the probability of a general election in Italy going into 2020?
You know, Italy is a land very rich of opportunities, but with some problem in the stability of government. So it's not easy to predict what could happen in the next months. But my idea is for the majority who support the government will be absolutely better to wait the natural appointment with the general election. So my forecast will be the general election will be in 2023. Then in Italy everything is possible. Now there is a good situation in Italy because after 1 year of populist government there is a majority pro-Europe and pro-business. This is very important.
Senator Renzi, just on that point, we know that there has been quite a lot of disagreement between different parties in the coalition. What would you say is holding them together now, other than the threat of Salvini and a League majority?
This is the problem for your audience, for your people. Why Italy is so complicated? Because in the history of Italy, we changed 66 governments in 73 years. And when I served as Prime Minister, I tried to change the constitution to ensure more stability to the government. My idea was we have to become, as France, with a leadership for 5 years, or as United States, a leadership for 4 years, and in this period give guarantee to the government to make law, to government without problem. So, unfortunately, I lost my job, we lost the referendum, and now we continue with this constitution who don't guarantee too much stability, 66 government in 73 years. But at the same time, the idea of this is the negative thing. The positive thing is that 2 years ago, 1 year and a half ago, with the leadership of Matteo Salvini, Italy tried to have a different vision about Europe, about Western alliance, about relation with Russia. And this new government, okay, is a government with different ideas and different forces. Particularly, this coalition is against Salvini. But they closed a law of budget just some days ago, good, without no taxation, a normal situation in Italy. So I consider that coalition able to continue in the government of Italy. But I repeat, I know my wonderful country and I know everything is possible in Italy, but for the moment the situation is good.
Okay, so as you said, that is what binds or brings together the coalition or keeps the coalition together. What about banking union? The Germans promised us a lot just a few weeks ago. They have political problems. When do you envisage banking union to be delivered, and what does it take to get you behind a bailout fund for Europe?
My idea is that Europe today is in the middle of the sea, because we left the coast, we left the land, and we enter in the sea. But to arrive to the other side of the sea, we have to continue to navigate. What means that? We have a lot of reforms, for example, the banking union, but also other reform. In my view, fiscal union is maybe more important than banking union, which Europe today have to finalize, to conclude. This is very important because in a world dominated by the competition between USA and China, what is the role of Europe today if we block these the processes of reform? And of course, banking union is important, particularly for the German banks, because we have a lot of German banks with some problems. Not only the great banks, but I think about Sparkassen and cooperative and little banks in Germany, regional banks. But my view is important to invest in the banking union, also to give a vision to European Union. So we have to continue in the banking union, we have to invest in the fiscal union, and let me be very clear, we have to change some rules in Europe, because, just to make only one example, if we have a DG competition who blocked some agreements, as for example Siemens and Alstom, these have a lot of consequences, very negative for customers in Europe, because if Europe will be able to create new champions, in this case Siemens and Alstom, but also in other ways, Europe will be competitive around the world. If DG competition will continue to block this M&A, my view is that Europe will lose too much position in the ranking around the world.
Senator Renzi, one of the things that is up for discussion is the notion of changing the risk weighting on government bonds for banks. This is something that Italy has opposed. What do you say to Germany's argument that the risk-free status of government debt leads to bad incentives for European banks, and it leads to a European sovereign bank loop, as we saw during the European bank crisis, or debt crisis, I should say?
Yeah, this discussion is a very strong discussion, and we opened this discussion after the crisis of 2011, 2012, and in my view, we were, as European people, we lost the opportunity to make a radical change 7 years ago. But now, what is the situation? There is a problem for a debt, for the public debt today in Europe. My view is not for the moment and not for the next years. Why? For a lot of reasons. First of all, because the strategy of QE changed deeply the risks and fortunately reduced the risk for public debt, and we as Italians, we know very well. But the real problem for Europe today is not this discussion about public debt, about European mechanism of stability, and etc. My view, the problem for Europe today is the lack of growth in both sides, growth in demography and growth in economy. Okay, we cannot solve the problem of demography with a statement our leader in Brussels. But please consider that if Europe will continue with this cross of demography, is not a cross, it's a flat growth in demography, because we are more or less 500 million of people, and will continue for the next 25, 30 years. And at the same time, Africa will be double from 1.2 to 2.5
Minister Renzi, can I ask you about growth? Minister Renzi, can I ask you about growth? You've identified as one of the biggest issues about growth in Europe. Christine Lagarde talks about a new policy mix in Europe to deliver growth, real growth, which is a challenge for Italy. Are you more of an advocate of common euro area budget, or at least the start of a common euro area budget, versus stimulus, versus stimulus from the likes of Germany?
I believe the growth is the problem. The only way to come back to growth in Europe, and a good growth, is first invest in infrastructure. I'm not a Keynesian fan, but today the only way is an unbelievable plan for infrastructure. Also with the fiscal stimulus, as you said, in every region of Europe and particularly in Germany, because the business model of Germany only focused on the export and not with an unbelievable commercial surplus in Germany, is over after 20 years, 15 years of growth of this business model. First, for Italy, we know the growth in Italy is absolutely not positive. Only during my government, from 2015 to 2017, we arrived to more or less plus 1% of growth. Absolutely not positive, but now we come back to 0.2. So we have a problem of growth in Italy. But the problem of growth in Europe is change the business model and invest in infrastructure.